The mug sat where she left it, half full, lipstick on the rim, steam curling up like it hadn't yet accepted she was gone. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Maybe longer. It wasn't the coffee that held me there. It was what was written on the napkin underneath. 2 words, scribbled in blue ink with a heart over the I. Be open. Not I'll miss you. Not love you. Just be open. Open to what? Being alone. Open to pretending like this wasn't betrayal dressed as a personal growth retreat? She left before sunrise, dragging her suitcase like she was sneaking out of a hotel room, not the home we built. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't even close the door fully. It bounced slightly in the frame, like it didn't know whether to stay open or shut. By the time I walked outside, I could still see the cloud of dust her tires kicked up at the end of our gravel road. She didn't look back. Of course she didn't. She said she needed a weekend away to rediscover herself. But her Spotify history said otherwise, a playlist titled Coastal Love. She hadn't been that subtle. Friday morning became a funeral for things I hadn't buried yet. I washed the sheets even though they didn't smell like her anymore. I vacuumed behind the couch and found the receipt. 2 tickets to a winery in Charleston. She'd paid in cash. A romantic tour package. 1 bed, champagne included. I'm not dramatic. I didn't punch a wall. I didn't even throw anything. I just stared at that receipt. Then the napkin again. Be open. Fine. So I opened every drawer in the house. Took out every version of us that ever mattered. Wedding photos, anniversary cards, the stupid jar of folded love notes we started in 2014 and stopped filling in 2016. I packed them all in a box labeled for her. Then I walked into the garage, pulled down the attic ladder, and climbed into the dust. There, under insulation fluff and forgotten holiday lights, was the red suitcase I hadn't touched since my brother's funeral. I brought it down. Not quickly. Not like in a movie. I took my time, dusted it off, zipped it open, and I started packing. Not for revenge. Not for theatrics. Just for peace. Because when she came back Sunday night, I wouldn't be waiting with questions or anger or a dramatic speech. I wouldn't be waiting at all. I'd be long gone. And the coffee? Still warm. By noon that same day, the living room looked like a garage sale held after a break-in. Frames were face down, cushions pulled apart, drawers emptied. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I think I just wanted to undo everything that had ever felt like her. The only thing I kept untouched was the cactus she insisted we name Elijah, because it was the only living thing she hadn't killed in our house. Fitting. I didn't cry. Not even once. But my chest felt like it had a locked door inside it, one she'd shut a long time ago. It didn't hit me all at once. It came in pieces. Little things. The missing earrings from the jewelry box, the hidden burner phone I found in the false bottom of her shoe drawer, the text message preview that blinked across the screen before it auto-locked. I can't stop thinking about last weekend. From someone saved as April, yoga. She never did yoga. It was almost laughable, in a disgusting way. I used to wonder why she'd come home with hotel shampoo bottles in her purse. They're free, why not? She'd say. Right. And the unfamiliar cologne on her scarf? Must have rubbed off at the office. Sure. I think I always knew. I just couldn't admit it out loud. And she counted on that. She counted on me being the quiet one. The one who'd clean the coffee filter after her, pick up her dry cleaning, say, I love you, even when it felt more like a question than a truth. But what she didn't count on was me walking away. I booked a cab 5 hours west using a prepaid card I found in our junk drawer. A small, dusty thing tucked between expired coupons and half-dead pens. I didn't know who gave it to us or when, but it covered just enough for 3 nights in a 1-bedroom place by the lake. I packed light. Just enough clothes for a weekend, some books I hadn't opened in years, and Elijah the cactus, because why not? He seemed like the only one who hadn't lied to me. Before leaving, I left a note on the kitchen counter. Nothing dramatic. No accusations. Just 3 words. You win. Goodbye. I knew she'd read into it. She always loved decoding things that weren't meant to be puzzles. She'd sit there thinking I meant, you win him, or you win your freedom, or maybe even, you win at destroying us. Honestly, I didn't care how she interpreted it. I wasn't leaving to send a message. I was leaving because I couldn't stand the echo of her absence pretending to be presence anymore. The drive to the cabin felt like shedding skin. Every mile stripped off a layer of anger, a layer of denial, A layer of the guy I had to pretend to be so she wouldn't get bored. I didn't blast music. I didn't call anyone. I just let the silence stretch its legs. By the time I reached the cabin, this lopsided, wood-paneled thing with chipped paint and a creaky porch, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness. Not peace. Not yet. But stillness. Like the world had stopped spinning for a minute just so I could breathe. I dropped my bag, set Elijah by the window, and lay down on the creaky twin bed. My phone buzzed once. Adrienne's name. I stared at the screen. Her timing was perfect, just long enough for me to have gotten far enough that her words couldn't reel me back in. I let it ring. I let it stop. And for the first time in our marriage, I didn't answer. The phone didn't buzz again for the rest of the night. No texts, no follow-up call. Just that one missed ring, like she tossed out a rope at the last second and figured I'd grab it out of habit. I didn't. I let it drift. That night in the cabin, I sat on the porch with a beer I bought from a gas station on the way up, some off-brand IPA with a label that peeled in the humidity. The lake was quiet. Still. A few crickets, one loon. No internet. No traffic. No false smiles. For the first time in years, I felt completely unnecessary, and somehow, that felt freeing. Then something strange happened. I started talking. Not to anyone. Just to the dark. I don't even remember what I said. I think I was practicing what I'd say if she ever asked why I left. The words started coming like floodwater after a dam cracks. I talked about the things she used to love and stopped mentioning. About the anniversaries she forgot, and I kept pretending didn't matter. About how many nights I sat beside her in bed while she scrolled Instagram, and I waited for her to remember I was still there. At some point, I realized I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was tired. Tired in a way that didn't go away with sleep. The next morning, I woke to a thunderstorm. Rain pounded the tin roof like it was trying to snap me back into reality. The power blinked out around 7 a.m. I made instant coffee with bottled water, wrapped in an old flannel blanket I found in the closet, and sat by the window watching the lake get beaten into ripples. That's when I saw the voicemail. Not a call. Not a text. Just a 1-minute and 46-second voicemail from Adrienne. My finger hovered over it for a full minute. I don't know why I didn't delete it immediately. Maybe I needed to hear her voice once more, even if it was a lie. I pressed play, and what I heard was not the woman I married. There was no apology, no fear, no confusion. Her tone was casual, almost cheerful. Hey babe, just checking in. I know you're probably sulking somewhere. I hope you're not being dramatic. Look, I know this weekend probably feels weird for you, but it's just something I needed to do. It's not about you, okay? It's about me. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. We'll talk when I get home. Just breathe or journal or whatever it is you do when you spiral. Love you. Kind of. I played it twice. Not because I didn't understand, but because I couldn't believe how easy it was for her to say those words like I was a pet she left with the neighbor. Love you. Kind of. It echoed in my head until I almost started laughing. Bitter, broken laughter. The kind that makes your eyes water but not from humor. I didn't call back. Instead, I opened my laptop. Yes, I brought it, hoping to maybe write something, journal, anything, and started going through old files. I found something I hadn't seen in years, a folder labeled L plus Adri. Inside were dozens of photos from our early years. Road trips, diner selfies, cheap motel stays where we thought the moldy shower curtain was charming. I stared at one picture longer than the rest, us, in a tent in Utah, bundled in blankets, eyes red from laughing. I didn't recognize her. Or me. I didn't delete the photos. I renamed the folder, Old Versions. Then I zipped it and archived it. Not out of spite, just to make space. Later that afternoon, the storm broke. The sun came out. I walked down to the lake and waded in up to my knees. The water was freezing, but I didn't move. I just stood there and let it remind me that I was still here. Still solid. Still mine. And for the first time, I didn't think about what she was doing or who she was with. I thought about where I was going next. And that scared me. In a good way. I didn't plan to go back home that Sunday. I'd told myself the cabin was a temporary escape, a weekend to clear my head, but as the sun rose on the third day, I realized something. Nothing I needed was in that house anymore. And more importantly, nothing in that house needed me. I took another walk around the lake that morning, this time with my shoes off. I let my feet sink into the mud, let the chill bite at my toes. It grounded me in a way nothing else had in years. No emails. No alarms. Just water, earth, and the sound of birds I couldn't name. Around noon, I checked my phone. Another message. This one wasn't from Adrian. It was from my neighbor, Curtis. Hey man, she's back. Came in fast. Slammed the door pretty hard. Thought you'd want to know. I stared at the screen for a while, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Curtis was the kind of guy who didn't text unless something was weird. He was also the one who once told me he saw Adrian in the passenger seat of a silver BMW that wasn't mine. I brushed it off at the time. Told him it was probably a rideshare. Now I wasn't so sure. I texted him back. Thanks. Can you keep an eye on things for a couple more days? He replied with a thumbs up and a beer emoji. Typical. That night, I decided to do something reckless, or at least it felt that way for me. A guy who considered changing brands of toothpaste a major life decision. I opened a blank document on my laptop and started writing a letter. Not to her. Not to anyone in particular. Just a letter that said everything I never said. I wrote about the night she came home smelling like sandalwood cologne and claimed it was from a candle at a friend's house. I wrote about the time she called me Nathan in bed, her ex's name, and I pretended I didn't hear it. I wrote about how I used to stay up at night Googling how to know if your marriage is ending, but would delete my search history because I didn't want to face it. I wrote until the sun started to rise. 6 pages. No paragraphs. Just thoughts unraveling like a frayed thread. And then, as I hovered over the Save As button, I paused. Instead of saving it as letter or confession or anything poetic, I titled the file Evidence of Ghosts. Because that's what she was to me now. A ghost of the person I once loved. A ghost who still wore my last name, slept in my bed, but hadn't looked me in the eyes in almost a year. That morning, while eating a bowl of stale cereal I'd found in the back of the cupboard, I heard a knock at the door. No one knew I was here. The knock came again, slower this time. Hesitant, like whoever was on the other side wasn't sure they should be. I peeked through the window and froze. It wasn't Adrian. It was her sister, Claire. She looked soaked from the rain, her auburn hair plastered to her face, a duffel bag at her feet. She glanced up at the cabin, eyes red, not from rain, from crying. I opened the door, heart pounding. Elliot, she whispered, I'm sorry to come here, but you need to know something. She stepped inside before I could say a word, dropped the bag, and pulled out a manila envelope. I shouldn't be showing you this, she said, but I can't let her keep pretending. Inside were printed screenshots, hotel receipts, messages, photos, all of them time-stamped over the past 6 months. 6 men, 6 cities, none of them me. I didn't speak. I couldn't. Claire reached out and touched my arm gently. She's not coming back for you, Elle. She never planned to. This weekend wasn't the start. It was just the first time she stopped hiding it. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry, like my body couldn't process grief anymore. All I said was, thank you for telling me. She nodded. I hated watching what she was doing to you. And then she said something I'll never forget. She didn't expect you to leave. That's why she's panicking now. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the fireplace with the manila envelope open in my lap, pages scattered like autumn leaves, my hands shaking but not from cold. Because in that moment, for the first time in years, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't just disloyal. She was cruel. And I had been the willing accomplice to my own humiliation. But not anymore. I didn't ask Claire to stay, but she stayed anyway. We didn't talk much that evening. She curled up on the couch with a blanket I'd never seen before, probably one she brought from her car, and stared into the fireplace while I paced silently. The only sound in the room was the soft creaking of the cabin walls when the wind shifted. I read the contents of the manila envelope 3 times. Not because I needed convincing, but because I needed to make sure I wasn't imagining how far this had gone. I recognized 3 of the men. One was Dawson, the guy I'd suspected from the reservation. One was an old friend of hers from college who had commented "fire, fire, fire" on her Instagram photos 6 months ago. Another was someone she met at a business seminar she claimed was mind-opening. The rest? Strangers. All different cities. Different weekends. Same woman. Same lies. Claire finally spoke just past midnight. She told me you'd never leave her. That you were too scared to be alone. My face didn't flinch. But something inside me cracked sideways, like a frame being knocked off the wall and hanging by one nail. She said that. She said you needed her, Claire said quietly. That she could do whatever she wanted because you didn't have the spine to walk away. I wanted to scream. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to disappear into the floorboards and let the wood bury me in its quiet wisdom. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I stood up, walked over to the fireplace, and tossed the manila envelope into the flames. Claire jolted. "What are you doing?" "Finishing it," I whispered. "She doesn't get to live rent-free in this cabin. Not even as paper." She stared at me for a long moment. I think she expected a breakdown, a tearful monologue, maybe a fit of rage. Instead, I walked back to the kitchen, poured a glass of tap water, and said something I hadn't said in years. "I'm okay. Not good. Not great. But okay." And that meant something. The next morning, Claire left. She didn't press me to go back or explain my plan. She hugged me tightly before she drove off, said, "You deserve better than what she made you think you were," and promised she wouldn't tell Adrian where I was. After she left, I packed up the cabin, took my cactus Elijah, my laptop, a few clothes, and nothing else. I didn't want the blanket I'd wrapped myself in during the crying nights. I didn't want the book I brought but never opened. I didn't even take the key. I left it on the kitchen counter with a sticky note that read, "Thanks for giving me a place to fall apart." I didn't go home. I drove to a town I'd passed on the way up, a quiet place with faded paint on the buildings and a barber shop that doubled as a bait shop. There was a small inn by the river. No Wi-Fi. No flat-screen TV. Just a bed, a fan, and a window overlooking the water. Perfect. I checked in under a fake last name. Not because I was hiding, but because I was starting over. Even if just for a few days. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done since college. I wrote a letter to myself. "Dear Elliot," it began. "You made it." I didn't fill it with inspiration or toxic positivity. I just told the truth. I wrote that I stayed too long, that I confused love with loyalty, that I thought patience was the same thing as strength, that I had let myself become invisible because I didn't want to make someone else uncomfortable with my pain. Then I folded the letter and left it on the nightstand. That evening, I got an email. Not from Adrian. From our joint bank. A notification. A large withdrawal. Over $7,000. Labeled as transferred to personal checking Adrian. My chest sank. Not because I needed the money, but because it proved something I'd suspected deep down. She hadn't just wanted space. She'd been preparing for escape. Financially. Emotionally. Logistically. She didn't expect me to leave first. I opened the bank app and checked the joint account balance. $12.74. She'd cleaned it out. No warning. No explanation. No message. It wasn't about the money. It was the audacity. The assumption that I would wait. That I would stay behind, pick up the pieces, and beg for answers. I closed the app. And I smiled. Because she had taken everything, except the one thing she never expected I'd find. My way out. I didn't react the way most people might when they find out their spouse emptied the joint account behind their back. There was no shouting. No calls to the bank. No desperate attempts to reverse the transaction. I just sat there in that small room with its rust-colored carpet and slowly cracked open the window beside the bed. The river outside gurgled steadily, like it didn't care what Adrian did, or how much money was missing from my life. I took a deep breath and whispered aloud, "That's the last thing she gets to take." That night, I barely slept. My brain was firing on every frequency. What would she do when she found the house empty? Would she even care? Would she be relieved? Would she rage? Around 2:40 a.m., I got my answer. My phone lit up. Adrian calling. I didn't answer. Then a text. "Where the hell are you?" And another. "This isn't funny. You can't just disappear." Then, the message that told me everything I needed to know. I saw the closet. "Where did you take my stuff?" I blinked at the screen. I hadn't touched her things. In fact, I went out of my way to leave everything exactly where she left it. Was she panicking? Confused? Or was this a tactic? Before I could decide, another message came in. "Is this about this weekend? Because if so, you're being unbelievably dramatic." There it was again. That word. Dramatic. Her favorite insult whenever I tried to express discomfort. It was her way of reminding me that my feelings were inconvenient. I turned off the phone. In the morning, I drove to a nearby cafe where the waitress didn't ask questions and the coffee came in mismatched mugs. I sat in a booth near the window and started writing again. This time, not for me. This time, for the lawyer I planned to hire. I opened a fresh document and began outlining everything I could remember: dates, hotel confirmations, the burner phone, Claire's envelope, even the screenshot I'd forwarded to my email before burning the physical copies. It wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. If Adrian had already decided I was disposable, then I wasn't going to be generous with the details of my exit. She had her secrets, and I had receipts. But as I typed, something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger fueling me anymore. It was clarity. The kind of clarity that stings at first, but then starts to feel like air filling your lungs after holding your breath too long. After finishing the document, I saved it to a flash drive and locked it in the glove box of my car. It felt symbolic, like I was no longer dragging her betrayal behind me like a suitcase. Now it was just something I kept in a drawer, just in case. That afternoon, I went for a walk by the river and saw something odd. A girl, maybe 15, was skipping rocks while her father sat on a bench reading a paperback novel. She kept glancing over, shouting questions about the best angles or how to flick her wrist. He wasn't annoyed. He looked up every time, smiled, and answered like it was the first time she ever asked. There was something so simple, so intentional about it. A man being present, fully present, not because he had to, because he wanted to. And it hit me. I had spent years being present for someone who was never even in the room. I went back to the inn and wrote another letter. This one I did address. Dear Adrian, I began. You once told me you felt like you were drowning in our marriage. What you never realized was that I was the one treading water for the both of us, waiting for you to stop pushing my head down. I didn't end it with anger. I ended it with a list. A list of things she could keep. The money, the memories, the version of me she decided was weak. And a list of things I was reclaiming. My time, my voice, and my damn name. I sealed the letter in an envelope and drove to a mailbox across town. Then I did something she never expected me to do. I checked into a place under my full first and middle name. Not to hide, but to begin again. No more Elliot Granger the husband. Just Elliot James. And for the first time, the mirror didn't look like a stranger. It had been 9 days since I left home. In that time, I'd changed my mailing address, set up a new bank account, transferred what little I had from my personal savings, and booked 3 more weeks at the quiet riverside inn where nobody knew my name, and nobody cared why I kept a cactus on the windowsill. The phone stayed off, but the world didn't. I learned that the house I'd left behind, our shared home, the one I'd paid the mortgage on while Adrian chased creativity, had been visited by police. Curtis, my neighbor, texted me from a different number. She called the cops, said you disappeared, said maybe something happened to you. I told him to let them know I was fine. I also told him to stop watching the house for me. It was time. Time to go back, not to reclaim it, but to finish the story properly. So on a Thursday morning, I made the drive. For hours. 1 stop for gas. No music. Just the rhythmic hum of the tires and the thought looping in my head. She doesn't know who's coming home. The neighborhood looked unchanged. The same chipped blue mailbox 2 doors down. The same tilted basketball hoop that had been rusting since the summer after COVID. Everything frozen, like my absence hadn't mattered to the street. But something had changed. The front door was wide open. Not unlocked, open. Swung fully, like whoever entered didn't expect resistance. I parked a block away, walked slowly, unsure what I'd find. There were no signs of break-in. No smashed glass. Just Adrienne's car in the driveway, and the faint sound of her voice inside. She was on the phone. I told you he vanished. He just left everything. No, I didn't touch his stuff until this week. He doesn't get to ghost me and keep everything. She paused. I heard pacing. I don't care if he saw the receipts, Dawson. He has no proof I took anything. And even if he does, let him try. What's he gonna do? Cry in court. I stood frozen just outside the door. Then I knocked. Hard. The conversation inside stopped. Silence. Then footsteps. Cautious ones. She opened the door and her face went white. Elliot, she blinked. Where have you been? I said nothing. Just stepped inside. She backed up slightly, arms crossed like she was preparing to brace for impact. But there would be none. Not for me. I came to get my things, I said, calm as a lake. That's all. She scoffed, but I saw the flicker of nervousness behind it. Oh, so now you care about your things? After you vanished for over a week? I had to call people. I thought maybe something happened to you. You mean after you emptied the account? I asked. After you spent $7,000 on your getaway while leaving a note that said be open? She blinked. That wasn't. Elliot, I needed that money. And I didn't think you'd just walk out like a child. I stepped past her, into the living room. It smelled like vanilla-scented air freshener, an attempt to make the place feel new. The couch was rearranged. My blanket was gone. Photos were missing from the wall. She had already started erasing me. I walked down the hall, entered the bedroom, and began packing. She followed me. You can't just. What are you doing? I'm taking my life back. That's dramatic. No, I said. Dramatic is keeping 6 lovers in 6 cities while pretending you're going on yoga retreats. Dramatic is transferring our savings to your personal account while telling everyone I'm emotionally unstable. Her mouth hung open, then shut. I didn't. You did. Silence again. Then, softer, Claire told you, didn't she? I nodded. She had no right. She had every right, I said. She was the only one in your life who didn't treat me like a placeholder. I finished packing, zipped the duffel, and turned to face her one last time. You know what hurts more than the betrayal? I said, my voice shaking but steady. That I spent years thinking I was hard to love. That I believed you when you made me feel like a burden. That I twisted myself into someone quieter, smaller, softer, just so you wouldn't leave. And the whole time, you were already gone. Adrian didn't speak. Maybe she had no script left to follow. I walked out of the bedroom, down the hall, and out the front door. And then I turned back. The locks will be changed by the end of the day, I said. This house was never just yours. Her jaw clenched. But she didn't protest. I didn't give her time to. I got in the car, pulled away, and watched the rearview mirror as she faded into the background like she always did when things got real. And this time, I didn't stop driving. Because I wasn't running away. I was running towards something. And I still had one more move to make. I didn't go back to the river town right away. I needed something new. Not temporary peace, but a real, permanent page turn. So I drove south. I passed the state line by dusk. Let the wind tousle my hair with the window cracked just enough for the fall air to reach me. Somewhere between mile marker 84 and a roadside diner called Mabel's Fry House, I realized I wasn't scared anymore. Not of being alone. Not of starting over. Not even of failing. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to prove anything to someone else. I was just listening to myself. I found a town tucked between wooded hills and scattered farmland, with a main street that hadn't been updated since the late 90s, the kind of place where people still waved from front porches and the gas station doubled as the town's only bakery. I rented a small upstairs apartment above a used bookstore. The landlady, a retired nurse named Deb, handed me the key with no questions and a smile that felt like a welcome home. I slept on a mattress on the floor that first night, curled up with Elijah the cactus beside me on a crate. The window was cracked open, and outside, someone was playing a guitar on their porch across the street. It wasn't perfect. Nothing was. But it was mine. A week later, I got a letter in the mail with Adrienne's handwriting on the envelope. I almost didn't open it. Inside were 3 lines. You win. You walked away. I thought you never would. There was no apology. No remorse. Just those words. I folded the note and burned it in a ceramic dish by the windowsill. The flame flared briefly, then disappeared. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. In the weeks that followed, I picked up shifts at a local community center, helping with admin and tutoring GED students. Nothing fancy. Nothing loud. But it filled the time, and it mattered to someone, which was more than I could say for most of the last year of my marriage. One afternoon, Deb introduced me to her niece, Lila. A quiet, thoughtful woman with a deep laugh and a chipped tooth she refused to fix because it's how people know I smile for real. We talked over boxed wine one evening on the bookstore's rooftop. She didn't ask what I'd run from. She just asked what I'd found. I told her, a man I can finally live with. She didn't laugh. She just nodded and clinked her glass against mine. Months passed. The leaves changed. I stayed. Not because I had nowhere else to go, but because, for once, I didn't want to be anywhere else. I started writing again. Not letters to Adrian. Not rants into the void. But stories. Short ones. Some fictional. Some maybe a little too close to the truth. The local paper even published one. The editor said it made her cry in her car. One evening, as snow whispered against the windows, I looked around my apartment and realized something strange. I hadn't thought about Adrian all day. Not once. Not in anger. Not in regret. Not even in memory. And that, I think, was the real freedom. She had walked out to experience something new, certain I'd be there when she came back. But I'd already gone somewhere better. Not a place. A version of myself. And this time, I wasn't going anywhere.